At 55, after a year of relentless diet and exercise, Susan Patterson's doctor gave her the verdict. Her metabolism was officially broken. Her metabolic age was clocked at 68. Her body was insulin resistant, and she was pre-diabetic. 8 months later, that same doctor stared at a new set of lab results, utterly speechless. Susan's metabolic age? 25. Her fasting insulin was perfect. Her energy levels? Through the roof. She hadn't just lost 30 pounds of stubborn fat, she had rebooted her entire metabolic engine. How did she go from a broken metabolism to the metabolic health of a woman less than half her age? Let's rewind. For most of her life, Susan had a relationship with food that was both a passion and a profession. As a pastry chef and the owner of a beloved Denver bakery, the Rolling Pin, her days were a whirlwind of flour, sugar, and butter. She was an artist, and her medium was dessert. The bakery wasn't just a business. It was an extension of her soul. It was the warm, yeasty smell of proofing croissants at 5 a.m., the delicate dance of piping intricate designs on a wedding cake, the joy in a customer's eyes as they bit into a perfectly flaky pain au chocolat. For 3 decades, she'd been able to enjoy her own creations in moderation, balancing the occupational hazards with an active lifestyle. She was a runner, a hiker, a woman who felt strong and capable in her own skin. Her body was a reliable partner, a well-oiled machine that allowed her to work 12-hour days on her feet and still have the energy to hike the challenging trails of the Rockies on the weekends. But as she entered her 50s, that reliable partner began to betray her. The change was subtle at first, a slow, creeping betrayal that she almost didn't notice. The weight gain started around her 52nd birthday. Just a few pounds at first, easily dismissed as a consequence of a particularly indulgent holiday season. But the pounds didn't come off. Instead, they brought friends. By the time she was 55, she was 30 pounds heavier, and the weight had settled with a vengeance around her midsection, forming a dense, unfamiliar tire of fat that was impervious to her usual tricks. Her running shorts, once a comfortable staple, now dug into her waist, creating a painful, embarrassing muffin top. She switched to baggy chef's pants and loose-fitting tunics, hoping to hide the changes, but she could feel the extra weight with every step. It was a constant, heavy reminder that something was wrong. Her energy, once boundless, became a scarce, precious commodity. She'd wake up in the morning feeling a profound, bone-deep weariness that a triple-shot espresso couldn't touch. The long hours at the bakery, once a source of joy, became a grueling marathon. She'd find herself leaning against the stainless steel counter, her head in her hands, fighting off a wave of exhaustion so intense it felt like a physical weight. The brain fog, a familiar symptom of menopause, was a constant companion, making it difficult to focus on new recipes or manage the bakery's finances. She once forgot the primary ingredient in a classic Genoese sponge, a recipe she had made thousands of times. Staring blankly at the bowl of her industrial mixer, her mind a complete and terrifying void. She felt like she was moving through a thick, cognitive sludge, her mind no longer the sharp, reliable tool it had once been. But the most frustrating part was that she was doing everything right, or so she thought. As the weight crept on, she doubled down on the conventional wisdom. She cut her calories, meticulously tracking every morsel of food in a mobile app. She increased her cardio, adding an extra 30 minutes to her daily runs, pushing herself to go further, faster. She ate salads for lunch and swapped her morning pastry for a low-fat yogurt, but her body refused to respond. The scale wouldn't budge. If anything, she felt worse. She was constantly hungry, a gnawing, persistent ache in her stomach that made it impossible to concentrate. She was irritable, snapping at her employees and her husband over the smallest things, and she was more tired than ever. Her body was in a state of rebellion, and she was losing the war. The breaking point came during a trip to a local farmer's market. She was sampling a new variety of peach, the sweet juice running down her chin, when she caught her reflection in the window of a nearby shop. She stopped, her hand frozen midway to her mouth. She didn't recognize the woman staring back at her. The woman in the reflection looked tired, puffy, and defeated. Her face was round, her arms were soft, and her belly protruded from beneath her loose-fitting shirt. It was a vision of everything she had been fighting against, a stark, unflattering portrait of her own decline. She felt a wave of shame so intense it was nauseating. She dropped the peach into a nearby trash can, her appetite gone, replaced by a cold, hard knot of despair. That's when she went to her doctor. The lab results were a brutal clinical confirmation of everything she had been feeling. Her fasting insulin was high, a clear sign of insulin resistance. Her triglycerides were elevated. Her metabolic rate, measured with a calorimeter, was that of a woman more than a decade older. "Your metabolism has slowed down, Susan," the doctor said, her tone a mixture of sympathy and resignation. "It's a natural part of aging, especially for postmenopausal women. Your body is just more efficient at storing fat now." She recommended a stricter diet, even lower in calories, and more exercise. It was the same advice Susan had been following for a year, the same advice that had left her feeling exhausted, hungry, and hopeless. That night, Susan sat at her kitchen table, the doctor's words echoing in her ears. A natural part of aging. Was this it? Was she doomed to a future of constant deprivation, of fighting a losing battle against her own body? The thought was infuriating. She had been a chef her entire life. She understood food, she understood the body, and she knew, with a certainty that came from deep within her gut, that there had to be a better way. She refused to accept a life of managed decline. Fueled by a potent cocktail of anger and determination, she opened her laptop and began to dig. She ignored the mainstream fitness blogs and their simplistic, eat less, move more mantras. She dove deep into the scientific literature, searching for terms like metabolic flexibility, reverse dieting, and insulin resistance in menopause. And then she found it. A series of studies from a research group at the University of Copenhagen detailing the metabolic effects of a process called reverse dieting. The concept was both terrifying and electrifying. Instead of cutting calories further, the studies suggested a period of slowly and systematically increasing calories, with a specific focus on protein, to repair the metabolic damage caused by chronic dieting. The theory was that years of calorie restriction had put her body into a state of metabolic hibernation, slowing her metabolism to a crawl in a desperate attempt to conserve energy. To fix it, she had to convince her body that the famine was over. She had to eat more, to burn more. It was a radical idea, a complete inversion of everything she'd been taught. But the science was compelling. The studies showed that a carefully controlled increase in calories, combined with heavy resistance training, could reboot the metabolism, increase resting metabolic rate, and improve insulin sensitivity. It was a path out of the metabolic prison she'd been living in. It was a path back to herself. Finding a professional who understood this counterintuitive approach was the next challenge. She eventually found a nutritionist, a woman named Dr. Anya Sharma, who specialized in metabolic restoration for women in midlife. During their first video call, Susan laid out her story, her voice thick with frustration. Dr. Sharma listened, nodding, her expression one of deep understanding. "You're not broken, Susan," she said, her voice calm and reassuring. "Your body is just adapted to a state of perceived famine. We need to teach it to trust you again. We need to feed it, not starve it." Dr. Sharma's plan was a revelation. It started with a 2-week diet break, where Susan was instructed to eat at her new higher maintenance calories with no restrictions. Then they began the reverse diet. Each week, they added 5,100 calories to her daily intake, mostly from carbohydrates. The goal was to slowly, methodically push her metabolism higher without triggering significant fat gain. The second part of the plan was a complete overhaul of her exercise routine. The long, slow runs were out. In their place were 3 days a week of heavy, full-body resistance training and 2 days of short, intense, high-intensity interval training, high-T sessions. "We need to give your body a reason to use this extra energy," Dr. Sharma explained. "We need to send a powerful signal to build metabolically active muscle. The first few weeks were a psychological battle. Eating more food after years of restriction felt like walking a tightrope without a net. Every meal was an act of faith, but she trusted the process. She followed the plan to the letter. She lifted heavy, pushing herself to add a little more weight to the bar each week. She did the high ET sprints, her lungs burning, her heart pounding in her chest. And she ate. She ate more than she had in years, and she savored every bite. For the first month, nothing happened. The scale stayed the same, her clothes fit the same. The doubt was a constant nagging voice in her head. This is crazy. You're going to gain all the weight back. But then, in the 5th week, something shifted. She woke up one morning and felt different. She felt rested. She felt energetic. The bone-deep weariness that had been her constant companion was gone. That week, she lost a pound. The following week, another. The weight began to melt away, and it was happening while she was eating more food than she had in a decade. Her body was changing. The soft, puffy layer around her middle began to shrink, replaced by a new, firm hardness. She could see the outline of her abdominal muscles for the first time in years. Her arms, once soft, were now defined with the elegant, powerful lines of lean muscle. She was getting stronger, not just in the gym, but in every aspect of her life. She could hoist a 50-pound bag of flour with an ease that surprised her. She could hike for hours without feeling a trace of fatigue. She felt powerful. She felt alive. 8 months after that first desperate call with Dr. Sharma, Susan was back in her doctor's office. The doctor walked in, a look of stunned disbelief on her face. She held up the new lab results. "Susan, what have you been doing?" she asked. Her voice filled with genuine awe. "Your fasting insulin is in the optimal range. Your triglycerides have been cut in half. Your metabolic age is 25. I've never seen anything like it." Susan just smiled, a wide, genuine smile that reached her eyes. She had done it. She had taken her broken, sluggish, menopausal metabolism and she had rebuilt it piece by piece. She had rejected the narrative of decline and had written a new one, a story of power, of resilience, of rebirth. That evening, she went for a run, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She ran through the familiar trails, her body feeling light and strong, her lungs filling with the crisp, clean Colorado air. She felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for the body she had rebuilt, but for the wisdom she had gained. She had learned that the answer wasn't to fight her body, but to understand it, to nourish it, to challenge it, to trust it. She had learned that menopause wasn't an ending. It was a new beginning, and she was just getting started. This story is a powerful illustration of a crucial concept, metabolic flexibility. It's the ability of your body to efficiently switch between fuel sources, carbohydrates and fats. A healthy, flexible metabolism burns carbs when you eat them and then seamlessly switches to burning stored body fat when you're not eating. Chronic dieting, excessive cardio, and the hormonal shifts of menopause can destroy this flexibility, leaving you in a state of metabolic gridlock where your body is inefficient at burning both carbs and fat. Susan's journey was a masterclass in restoring this flexibility. The reverse diet, by slowly reintroducing carbohydrates, retrained her body to use them for energy rather than storing them as fat. The high-protein diet provided the building blocks for new muscle, and the heavy lifting sent the signal to build that muscle. The HIIT sessions further enhanced her insulin sensitivity and mitochondrial function. The result was a complete metabolic reboot. She didn't just lose weight, she changed her body on a cellular level, turning it from a fat-storing machine into a fat-burning one. This is the science of metabolic restoration, and it's a game-changer for women in midlife. It's a reminder that you don't have to accept a sluggish, broken metabolism as a normal part of aging. You have the power to rebuild it. You have the power to reboot it. You have the power to reclaim your energy, your strength, and your vitality. The choice is yours. The journey to a rebooted metabolism is not just about eating more and exercising differently. It's about understanding the intricate hormonal symphony that governs your body and learning how to become the conductor of that symphony. For Susan, this meant going beyond the general advice and diving deep into the specifics. Dr. Sharma taught her about the importance of nutrient timing, a concept that was completely foreign to her. She learned that consuming a protein-rich meal within an hour after her resistance training sessions would maximize muscle protein synthesis. The process of repairing and rebuilding the muscle fibers she had broken down during her workout. She started bringing a shaker bottle with a high-quality whey protein isolate to the gym, drinking it immediately after her last set. This simple change had a profound impact on her recovery, reducing muscle soreness and accelerating her strength gains. She also learned about the power of carbohydrates to fuel her performance and replenish her glycogen stores. Instead of fearing carbs, she began to see them as a powerful tool. She would consume a small, easily digestible carbohydrate source, like a banana or a handful of dates, about 30 minutes before her workout. This gave her the quick energy she needed to lift heavy and push hard. After her workout, she would have a more substantial meal that included both protein and complex carbohydrates, like grilled chicken with quinoa and roasted vegetables. This combination of protein and carbs worked synergistically to repair her muscles and replenish her energy stores, setting her up for success in her next workout. The mental shift was just as profound as the physical one. For years, Susan had been trapped in a cycle of restriction and guilt. Food was the enemy, something to be controlled and minimized. Now, she was learning to see food as fuel, as medicine, as a source of strength and vitality. She rediscovered the joy of cooking, not just for her customers, but for herself. She experimented with new recipes, creating delicious, protein-packed meals that were both satisfying and nourishing. She learned to listen to her body's hunger and satiety cues, to eat when she was hungry and stop when she was full. It was a process of unlearning decades of diet culture dogma and learning to trust her own body again. The resistance training was another revelation. Susan had always been a runner, a cardio queen. She had believed that the key to weight loss was to burn as many calories as possible. The idea of lifting heavy weights was intimidating. She was afraid of getting bulky, of getting injured, of looking foolish in the gym. But under Dr. Sharma's guidance, she discovered a new kind of strength, a new kind of power. She learned to love the feeling of the cold, rough steel of the barbell in her hands. She learned to love the challenge of adding another 5 pounds to the bar. She learned to love the feeling of her muscles working, of her body growing stronger and more capable with each session. The gym became her sanctuary, a place where she could leave the stresses of the day behind and focus on the simple, satisfying work of building a stronger version of herself. And the results were undeniable. As she built more muscle, her metabolism began to roar back to life. Muscle is metabolically active tissue, meaning it burns calories even at rest. For every pound of muscle she gained, her resting metabolic rate increased, turning her body into a 24/7 fat-burning machine. The HIIT sessions further amplified this effect, creating a powerful afterburn effect, where her body continued to burn calories at an elevated rate for hours after her workout was over. This combination of a higher calorie intake, a high-protein diet, heavy resistance training, and HIIT was the perfect storm for a metabolic reboot. It was a comprehensive, science-backed approach that addressed the root cause of her metabolic dysfunction, rather than just treating the symptoms. It was a testament to the fact that with the right knowledge and the right strategy, it is possible to not just survive menopause, but to thrive. It is possible to build a body that is stronger, leaner, and more resilient than ever before. It is possible to reclaim your metabolism, your energy, and your life. The choice, as always, is yours. Let's delve deeper into the science of Susan's transformation, because her story is a powerful blueprint for anyone feeling trapped by a sluggish menopausal metabolism. The first pillar of her success was the strategic and methodical increase in her protein intake. For years, like many women, Susan had been under-eating protein, focusing instead on salads and low-fat foods. Dr. Sharma corrected this immediately, setting a target of 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of her body weight. This number wasn't arbitrary. It's a figure supported by a growing body of research as optimal for stimulating muscle protein synthesis in older adults who are less responsive to the anabolic signals of protein than their younger counterparts. This high-protein diet had several profound effects. First, it provided the raw materials, the amino acids, necessary to repair and build new muscle tissue in response to her resistance training. Without adequate protein, her workouts would have been a futile exercise in breaking down muscle without the ability to rebuild it stronger. Second, protein has the highest thermic effect of food, TEF, of all the macronutrients. This means that your body burns more calories digesting and metabolizing protein than it does for fats or carbohydrates. Up to 30% of the calories from protein are burned during digestion, which meant that by simply shifting her macronutrient ratios, Susan was increasing her daily calorie expenditure. Third, protein is incredibly satiating. The high-protein meals kept her feeling full and satisfied, which was a game changer after years of feeling constantly hungry on her low-calorie diet. This made it easier to stick to her plan and avoid the mindless snacking that had been sabotaging her efforts. The second pillar was the shift from chronic cardio to heavy resistance training. Susan's long, slow runs were not only failing to produce the results she wanted, but they were likely contributing to her metabolic slowdown. Excessive cardio can be a significant stressor on the body, leading to an increase in cortisol, the stress hormone. Chronically elevated cortisol can lead to muscle breakdown and an increase in visceral belly fat, the exact opposite of what Susan was trying to achieve. Heavy resistance training, on the other hand, sent a powerful anabolic or muscle-building signal to her body. The stress of lifting heavy weights triggered a cascade of hormonal responses, including the release of growth hormone and IGF-1, which, as we know, are crucial for building and maintaining muscle mass, especially when estrogen is low. This new muscle was the key to her metabolic reboot. It was like adding a bigger, more powerful engine to her car. Her body was now burning more calories around the clock, even when she was sleeping. The third pillar was the introduction of high-intensity interval training, HIIT. These short, sharp bursts of all-out effort followed by brief recovery periods were a powerful tool for improving her insulin sensitivity and mitochondrial health. Mitochondria are the powerhouses of our cells, responsible for converting food into energy. As we age, and particularly during menopause, mitochondrial function can decline, leading to fatigue and a slower metabolism. HIIT has been shown to be a potent stimulus for mitochondrial biogenesis, the creation of new, more efficient mitochondria. This meant that Susan's body was becoming more efficient at burning fuel, particularly fat. The HIIT sessions also had a significant impact on her insulin sensitivity. By depleting her muscle glycogen stores, the HIIT workouts created a sink for the glucose from her carbohydrate-rich meals to be stored, rather than circulating in her bloodstream and causing a spike in insulin. This was a crucial step in reversing her insulin resistance and breaking the cycle of fat storage. The final, and perhaps most crucial pillar, was the reverse diet itself. This was the key that unlocked her metabolic prison. By slowly and systematically increasing her calorie intake, she was sending a powerful signal of safety to her body. She was telling her hypothalamus, the master regulator of her metabolism, that the famine was over. In response, her body began to upregulate its metabolic rate. Her thyroid hormone production increased. Her leptin levels, the hormone that signals satiety, rose. Her body, finally convinced that it was no longer in a state of starvation, began to willingly let go of its stored fat. This process was not linear. There were weeks when the scale didn't move and weeks when it went up a pound. But Susan, guided by Dr. Sharma, learned to trust the process, to look at the long-term trend rather than the daily fluctuations. She learned to pay attention to other signs of progress, her increasing strength in the gym, her improved energy levels, the way her clothes were fitting. This holistic, science-backed approach was the antithesis of the simplistic, one-size-fits-all advice that had failed her for so long. It was a personalized, strategic intervention that addressed the unique metabolic challenges of menopause. It was a testament to the fact that with the right knowledge, the right tools, and the right mindset, it is possible to not just manage menopause, but to conquer it. It is possible to build a body that is stronger, healthier, and more resilient than you ever thought possible. The power to reboot your metabolism is in your hands. The choice is yours. What will you do? The psychological journey of a reverse diet cannot be overstated. For Susan, it was a profound rewiring of a lifetime of beliefs about food and weight. The first time Dr. Sharma instructed her to add a serving of rice to her dinner, she felt a surge of panic. For years, she had equated carbohydrates with weight gain, a forbidden indulgence. Now she was being told to eat them every day. It felt like jumping out of a plane and being told to trust that the parachute would open. She had to fight the urge to compensate by doing extra cardio or skipping breakfast the next day. She had to consciously, deliberately let go of the control that had been her crutch for so long. There were days when she would stand in front of the mirror, convinced that she looked puffier, that the fat was returning. She would have to take a deep breath, look at her tracking spreadsheet, and remind herself that she was following a scientifically validated protocol. She was not just blindly eating more. She was strategically fueling her body for growth and repair. The community she found at the gym was an unexpected lifeline. She had always been a solo runner, lost in her own thoughts and her own music. The gym, with its grunting men and clanging weights, had always seemed intimidating. But she quickly discovered a subculture of women her age who were on a similar journey. They were mothers, professionals, grandmothers, all refusing to accept the narrative of decline. They shared tips on protein powder, celebrated each other's personal records, and offered a knowing nod of encouragement on the days when the weights felt heavy and the motivation was low. This sense of sisterhood, of being part of a tribe of strong women, was as crucial to her success as the diet and the exercise. It was a reminder that she was not alone in her struggle, and that there was immense power in shared experience. This transformation was not just about aesthetics. It was about reclaiming her life. Before, her days were dictated by her fatigue and her food cravings. Now, she was in control. She had the energy to work a full day at the bakery and then go for a hike with her husband. She had the mental clarity to create new, innovative recipes. She had the confidence to wear a fitted dress to a friend's wedding and feel beautiful and strong in her own skin. She was no longer a passenger in her own life. She was the one in the driver's seat, and she was heading towards a future that was brighter, stronger, and more vibrant than she had ever dared to imagine. The science is clear. The path is laid out. The only question that remains is, are you ready to take the first step? Let's zoom in on the cellular level, on the mitochondria, the tiny powerhouses within our cells. Think of them as billions of microscopic engines. As we age, and especially during the hormonal roller coaster of menopause, these engines can become old, rusty, and inefficient. They produce less energy and more metabolic exhaust in the form of free radicals, leading to fatigue, inflammation, and a sluggish metabolism. Susan's previous routine of long, slow cardio was like asking these old, rusty engines to run a marathon. It was a stressful, inefficient process that only created more wear and tear. HIIT, on the other hand, was like taking those engines to a high-performance mechanic. The short, intense bursts of all-out effort sent a powerful signal of stress to the cells, a signal that said, "We need more. Power." This triggered a process called mitochondrial biogenesis, the creation of new, more efficient mitochondria. It's the body's ultimate adaptation, a biological upgrade. With each HIIT session, Susan was not just burning calories. She was building a bigger, better, more powerful fleet of metabolic engines. This is why her energy levels skyrocketed, and her body became so efficient at burning fat for fuel. She had literally rebuilt her metabolism from the inside out, on a cellular level. This is the profound transformative power of strategic, intelligent exercise, and it's a power that is available to every woman, at any age.